Yeah, man, like we talked a lot about religion today, and it still kind of just scares me that maybe I'll be forgotten after I die. Like just not sure what happens after I die.
Yeah. Well, there's not a lot of ways you can really preserve it. A lot of people will listen to voicemails of their dead ones or see Facebook videos.
Yeah, I mean, have you ever seen How I Met Your Mother? Like they do that in that show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Who died? Does anybody die in that show?
I for Marshall's dad. Marshall's dad died, and he had left a voicemail. So
I asked the voicemail saved from you if you die, so that'll be good.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, people could just listen to this podcast if we pass away.
Yeah, it could actually boost our ratings if one of us did. That's a big thing with artists.
Yeah, like a lot of those classical paintings and stuff. That might not be a bad idea.
Yeah. You willing to take the fall or?
Yeah. How do we decide who has to pass away?
Flip a coin.
Okay. Yeah. Let me go get my piggy bank. Hey, crewmates. That's what we're calling you guys by now. Hey, what's up, crewmates? That's what we're calling you guys now, by the way. So get used to it. You have no choice in the matter.
Crewmates.
So we wanted to add a quick disclaimer at the beginning of this podcast for you guys. Basically, there are some more heavy topics. Maybe heavy is the wrong word. More serious topics. We talk about religious philosophy in this podcast, different belief systems. And we just wanted to make sure that anyone that might be sensitive to these sensitive topics has a heads up and can keep in mind that throughout this podcast, we aren't saying anything to be offensive. We are expressing our belief systems a little bit. We're more exploring someone else's belief systems. So just keep that in mind. We're just trying to learn as much as we can about people's ways of thinking and what they believe.
Exactly. Arza nor I are necessarily atheist. I think I personally lead more toward agnostic, and I think he does as well. We're really just trying to get people from all walks of life, and we don't want to be seen as that podcast that's like, oh, we're only left and we're only atheists. Like we like, just because we are leaning more toward those sides, we're really trying to get people from all walks of life, and we'd like to learn more about them and how they got to those kinds of conclusions.
Yeah, so hopefully you enjoy the episode, and see ya.
I like it.
Hello and welcome to the Mike at the Helm podcast. I'm your host, Mike Spencer.
And I'm your host, Arza Helm.
Arza, we have a guest we are very excited about. Is there any chance you'd like to introduce him?
Yeah, we have Mr. Justin here today. He is the host of the Empathetic Atheist podcast. He's big into religion, debating religion. He has a background in the military, and we're very excited to learn about his background and his experiences.
All right. So, Justin, would you like to kind of explain your show to our listeners?
Yeah, sure. So my show is on YouTube. It's under the Empathetic Atheist Show or the EA Show. If you search it, we're close to 1,000 subscribers now. Been doing it for about 8 or 9 months now. So hopefully, before I hit my year mark, we'll be able to get it monetized, get that 1,000 subscribers. It's already an LLC, so it's officially a business now. I'm just waiting for some income to pop in, but once we get the subscribers, we'll be able to do that. But basically, the show is me having interviews with a co-host of mine. We switch through co-hosts. We have interviews with both atheists and theists alike on what they believe, why they believe it, and how they came to that position. After the main interview, which is about an hour long, we go into an after party to where the people that were in the chat, if they so choose to, ask me for a link. We send them a link and they can actually join the panel, join the show, and actually have conversations with everybody. Or if they have questions for the guest that they'd like to ask themselves rather than over text, they can do so. But yeah, I have debates, debate reviews, interviews, open discussions, all kinds of stuff. So if that's something that you guys may be interested in, go ahead and check it out. Like I said, the Empathetic Atheist Show or the EA Show on YouTube.
That's awesome.
So Justin, you go, Arza.
Oh, I was just going to ask, so how did you kind of get started in that passion project or that going down that road of debating religion, being super interested in religion. Did you grow up religious? How did that all come about?
So just to sum it up as quickly as I possibly can, this is like a 3-hour discussion if we really wanted it to be. But I grew up Catholic, was raised in a Catholic church, went to a Catholic school for 7 years. Communion, confession, anointment, baptism, the whole works. When I was in, I think, 2nd or 3rd grade, I had science homework that I needed to turn in, and my teacher told me that if I didn't turn it in, that I would be hung by my tongue over fire and brimstone, which absolutely scared the living daylights out of me. Give me just 1 second.
Pretty common with religion these days.
Yeah, I mean, more or less, that's what Mormons teach. Maybe not with science homework, but like
guilt tripping.
Yeah, like you don't act according to their standards, and
sorry about that.
And you'll be punished.
No, you're good.
Yeah. So, she told me that I would be hung by my tongue over fire and brimstone, and that scared the living shit out of me.
Yeah.
And it was pretty traumatic as a 2nd grader sitting there thinking, what could happen in the afterlife if I didn't turn my science homework in. So that scared me. Grew up, my church, my Catholic church that I went to, which was like right across the street from my house. There was, I think it was a death in the family. We kind of stopped going for a little bit, and after we stopped going for like 2 or 3 weeks. We got a letter from the church saying, "Hey, we haven't seen you in a few weeks. Here's a bill for what you should put in the collection plate."
Oh, wow.
So they literally sent us a fucking bill, my parents, because we haven't been there, and they're like, "Where's our money?" So
okay.
That turned me off to it. And then shortly after that, the church that was telling us to pay them money, the priest of the church was actually hit with sexual molestation of a child and, screwing with little kids. So he got moved to a different church to where I think still to this day, he's still the priest of that church. So they basically just moved them around from place to place, hoping that they don't do it again. Just sweeping everything under the rug. Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, that stuff kind of turned me off. So I went to become, I said, screw Catholicism. Let me try this Christianity stuff out. It's a little bit more laid back. It's a little bit more, watered down and diluted. So I checked it out, and I actually liked it a lot. A lot of my friends went to the same church. We hung out together. I became part of the band. I've been playing guitar for about 18 years. So I was part of the church band. Wanted to become a preacher. Everybody around me told me that I was filled with the, Holy Spirit, and that I was meant to, since I was good with like public speech and just talking to groups of people and not, being scared to come up on stage or anything, that I was filled with the Holy Spirit and that I was destined to become a preacher. So before leaving for seminary, I decided to dive into the Bible, read some of the stuff that you don't normally hear at the pulpit. And I heard some crazy stories, like, for example, Elisha. There was a guy, Elisha. There was 42 children, in the city, just, out here in an open field playing with each other. 2 of those children came up and said, "Be on your way, Baldy." Elisha had a receding hairline. And Elisha prayed up to God. God sent a curse down to where 2 female bears came and mauled 42 children, innocent children, to death. So that scared the living daylights out of me. There was also the story about the guy who God told him to impregnate his dead brother's wife, and he ended up pulling out and, splooging on the ground, and then God killed him because he didn't follow his commands. So, I'm reading these stories, and I'm like, oh my God, this is not my God. I've never heard this stuff before. Yeah. So I actually turned around and went the opposite direction, laid low for a couple of years. It's like, I was what's considered an apatheist, where I didn't know if there was a God or not. I just didn't care. I was just going to live my life just because I wanted to live my life. So I was an apatheist for a while, worked my way out of a deistic state to where I just believed there was some type of higher power. Started watching some, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Matt Dillahunty. Started watching some of those shows and debates. And it just made more and more sense. And I just started gathering up more and more information, and I just couldn't stop doing it. So still to this day, I'm absolutely obsessed with having discussions and learning philosophical discussions about theology and religion. So that's where I am today.
So what's the difference between like apatheism and agnosticism?
So agnosticism is stating that I don't know if there's a God or not. So a lot of people define it different ways. So I used to really consider myself an agnostic atheist. Agnostic and Gnostic are truth claims, are knowledge claims. Do I know or do I not know? Well, if you just say you're agnostic, I'll be like, okay, what are you agnostic about? You know, what belief are you agnostic about?
Okay.
What belief do you not know about? So basically, I am was an agnostic atheist for a while, to where I didn't know if there was a God or not, but I did not believe. So I did not believe puts me in the atheist category. I did not know put me in the agnostic category. So I will say I'm agnostic towards a few different gods, but mostly I am Gnostic, and in the sense that I know that these gods don't exist. I'm hard atheist when it comes to any polytheistic religion or Christianity. I know for a fact, absolutely 100% true, that God does not exist.
Interesting. So religions like Islam, would you say you are more agnostic or atheist on those
Agnostic.
kinds of things?
I'm agnostic about basically Islam and Judaism.
Right, because I know I remember I have a lot of atheist friends that they have converted to Islam, and they've told me it's because they have a harder time disproving a God when it's in the Islam religion than when it's in the Christian religion. And can you kind of explain where that comes from?
So from my experience, when the Muslims have approached me, which I talk to them on a daily basis, I absolutely love my Muslim friends. They're fantastic. Not to say that I don't like my Christian friends. I don't really argue against Islam too much because I'm still learning. I'm currently learning how to read, write, and recitate in Arabic. So, I mean, like, if you wanted like an example, Surah 112 is one of the shortest. It's Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul huwallahu ahad. Allahu samad lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakun lahu kufuwan ahad, which is basically stating that God is that Allah is the entirely merciful, especially merciful, that He is the only God, that He is not born nor does He beget, which is basically that jab for Christianity right there, saying like, yeah, Jesus, nope, not happening. Because Jesus God does not have children. God does not beget things. So basically, that's the sum up of that verse right there. But I'm studying and reading the Quran and trying to learn more about it, seeing if there's logical problems. I don't necessarily like the arguments to where Christians bring to Muslims, well, what about Aisha or Muhammad was a pedophile, or the moon being split in half in the Quran, or, you know, Muhammad riding on a flying donkey up to heaven? Like, obviously, as an atheist, I think that's a whole bunch of hogwash. But for the Christian to be able to say that to the Muslim while they, in fact, believe in crazy miracles like Jonah living in a fish for 3 days, or Jesus walking on water.
Yeah.
I mean, you still believe in absurd claims too. So for those to be arguments that you're using for a defeater for Christianity, I find absolutely it's entertaining. It's hilarious that they would try and use the same arguments that could be used on them with their own stories. So I find, as of right now, Islam to be very logical. They don't come at me with saying, here's the Quran, this is what you need to believe about the Quran. They say, okay, do you believe that the universe is eternal? Let's dive into a philosophical discussion about the Kalam cosmological argument. Then let's dive into the contingency argument for a necessary being. Use these philosophical discussions to make baby steps to where you believe that there is a beginning to the universe, a necessary existence or being that created this universe, that was the cause of this universe at least, and that it has a will. Once you're at that point, you're at deism, right? And now you have to dive into the Quran and see how everything in the Quran lines up with all of the philosophical discussions that you've currently had. Christianity doesn't do that. They say, hey, look, here's the gospel. Jesus died for you. You better love him. And no.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you mentioned like you don't really believe in a lot of these Western forms of God, but have you learned much about Eastern religions like Buddhism or Taoism or Or
yeah. So I've had a Buddhist, I've had multiple Hindus on my channel.
Okay.
And talk to them about that. See, now that's not entirely. I dismiss it because a lot of them claim that there are multiple beings that are necessary. And a necessary being is a being that's self-sufficient, which means it only needs itself to exist. It's uncaused, in that sense. Hinduism has a lot of demigods. So you have the creator god, and then you have all the other gods that come before it and below it. So those gods are more of like demigods, which are not necessary. They began to exist. They're gods that were created. So it's not necessarily a problem for that. But if this one God that created everything is the most powerful and necessary, why would he need any of those other demigods? Why couldn't he just fill the place of all those other personalities?
Yeah. And so
that's where I find it, yeah.
So one of the religions that I find the most fascinating, I find resonates with me, is Taoism. And I'm by no means an expert on it, but like I've read their sacred texts, and it talks a lot about like this great Tao of the universe, like essentially a path of the universe that we have no control over, and it will just happen. And like what's your view on that type of thing? I guess maybe like a great path, like that guides us. That guides the universe.
I don't believe it as a predetermined path. So I hold a very unorthodox view. I am a materialist, so I believe in a material universe with a causal chain of causes and effects. And with that, I am also a hard determinist, which means that I do not believe that we have choice. I did not choose to come on this podcast with you guys today. I literally could not have done otherwise. That's my framework, my philosophical framework is that I am a hard determinist. I was born in an existence that I didn't choose, with a body and brain that I didn't choose, with parents that I didn't choose, and a geography and time that I didn't choose, with a childhood full of influences and experiences that I didn't choose. All of these things come together to form arena of faculties, which is my personality. What makes me, what I think is good, wrong, good, bad, right, wrong, true, and false. And if all of those things that my personality is based off of things that I did not choose, when did I ever actually make a choice? Yeah. So it kind of resonates with what you're saying. The universe is in some type of line of how it's supposed to go or supposed to be. Now, I would disagree if you say that it was preordained or predetermined from some point in time, but I believe that we can take this moment right now, look into the past, and see the series of causes and effects that has causally led us to this moment right now, to this last domino falling over. So yeah, it's a little much to take in when you first hear about it, because if this is the case, then anybody that kills a family of 4 or rapes somebody, they literally couldn't have done otherwise. Yeah. So it's not a very palatable position to hold. I wish I really wasn't convinced of this, but unfortunately, I've dug myself a hole so deep that I literally could not get myself out of it. I'm stuck.
Right. That's one of the things I'm not a fan of, where I don't know, I really like the idea of free will, and I like their idea of there not being any free will. I'm a firm believer that if you were born with the same genetics as Hitler and went through all the same experiences as Hitler, you'd be Hitler. But I also like to think that I make my own decisions, and I don't know. I think that's more of an ego thing, and I feel like a lot of people will tend to lean my way, where they just kind of contradict each other like that. Yes. And it's a hard subject.
It's a thought experiment that you have to have with somebody. Have you ever done anything that you didn't want to do? Well, a lot of times people would say, for example, I went to work yesterday, but I didn't want to. I wanted to stay home, be lazy, eat a bag of chips, and play video games on the couch. I didn't want to go to work, but I did anyways. And then you ask the further question, why did you go to work? Well, I went to work because I have money to make and a family to take care of. Then you ask, so did you want to sit on your couch, or did you want to support your family? Yeah. Well, I wanted to support my family. Okay, so you did exactly what you wanted to do every time. You have never in your life ever actually done something that wasn't your deepest desire in that situation. You have always done what you have desired to do the most. Yeah. To which, if you can't deviate from that path, how have you ever made a choice? If your desires are based on experience, influences, and experiences, when did you ever choose to like those things? Do you like a Whopper from Burger King? Did you choose your taste buds?
Yeah.
You can keep going back and show how things that were not your choice caused you to do this.
And I know, I can't remember the name of the philosopher, but the philosopher that really made this idea big, he actually ended up killing himself because he couldn't take this idea that like there was no free will. Like he ended up going crazy over it.
Was it Friedrich Nietzsche?
It might. No, I don't think it was. I can't.
Think it was Friedrich Nietzsche.
I'm not sure if I'd recognize the name honestly if I heard it, but I remember reading about the philosopher and, yeah, and basically his idea was like on like a neurological level, like you don't determine how your brain reacts to certain situations. Like that's just like predetermined how those cells will move or send signals or whatever that will lead you to make a decision. And yeah, like I know that it troubles a lot of people, but I think it's important to have I think this point of view is important when you're empathizing with people, to really understand, like, look, a lot of people don't really determine a lot of the decisions they make at all, and we need to cater to people and give them the best circumstances in order for them to react in a positive way in which it's mutually beneficial for everyone.
Yeah, and people that quote unquote do things wrong, we need to focus on rehabilitation rather than punishment. And I think that a deterministic worldview will do that in the judiciary system. If we're focused on putting people away because they are responsible and they need to be held accountable for what they've done, then we can focus on locking them away in solitary confinement for years. But if we look at it as, hey, bud, you just killed this family of 4. There's a family of 4 that you just killed. Unfortunately, you couldn't have done otherwise.
Yeah.
You know, we are we now are determined as a society to put you away and take you off of the streets and out of society because we were determined to have the best society as we possibly could. So now we're going to put you away and try and rehabilitate you to where you're a functioning member of society again. Yeah, and now we can focus more on rehabilitation rather than he deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison.
Yeah, and it's a really hard line because it's like, well, at what point can you hope to rehabilitate people, and what point is it just like, oh, the damage like has been done to a point at which it can't really be undone, and it's just a detriment to society. And so I don't know, what's your view on that?
Yeah, so if you look at like Norway, Norway has prisons that look like very expensive apartments.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Germany too.
They're big into rehabilitation and not making it look like a hole to die in. They make it look like somewhere where you need to stay while you get better. And that's kind of the focus. And if you look at their rate of people who end up back in prison for the same types of crimes is 20% compared to America's 78%. 78% of convicted felons end up back in prison for along the same lines of the same crime that they were there to begin with. With the rehabilitative process of Norway, literally only 20% of them end up back in prison.
Yeah, and I think the longest sentence you can even get in Norway is like 25 years, right? Like even for the most heinous of crimes.
Sure about that, but yeah, I mean, I would agree with you that I think their system is set up a lot better than ours.
So how would you define free will? Like the way you talk about free will, it seems like we can't even really achieve that ever.
So free will is the ability to do otherwise.
The ability to do otherwise. Okay.
So if we were to rewind ourselves back to where you had breakfast today, would you have been able to choose to have something different? And if you were, how would you argue for that? I, as a determinist, have the one example of the universe working exactly how it did and no other examples to make an argument for. So I see this as a series of causes and effects. I am literally just molecules in motion in a material world. How could I show you that I actually could do otherwise? I don't think I can.
I got you. So how could you make a world with free will? Like, I don't know. I don't know how I'm phrasing my question correctly, but it seems like free will would never be achievable even without humans or I don't know. Like, could you potentially ever see a life form that would have free will?
So there's a guy that I talked to by the name of T-Jump. He's another atheist that I've actually had a conversation with, more of like a informal debate, because I disagree with his position on objective morality. The way he solves for a objective morality is saying that the least imposition of will is the best goal that we have for an objective morality. Within that framework, everybody has their own universe. And the laws of physics have been bended in such a way to where an inanimate object like a car could not possibly run you over unless you wanted it to. So your will would never, ever be imposed on. My disagreement with him is that this is a great idea to which you could have a universe to where you have free will, to where you could literally go back in time and be like, oh, so hold on, I messed up right there. Kind of like when you're playing solitaire, you know how you can go back a few moves and be like, okay,
right,
so
Control
now
Z.
I'm going to do something different. That right there, that is free will. We can't do that. I made a decision in the past. I got to live with it. Like if I regret that decision, I have to live with that decision. I can't hit the backspace a few times and go back a few causes and effects and be like, I'm going to do this instead because now I know how that way plays out, so I'm going to go this way. Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if we were able to do that, but I don't think we can.
So,
but
sorry, go ahead. Do you believe in, say, alternate timelines? Like, I know some people believe, like, in your given timeline, you don't have freedom of choice, but when you do, like, make different choices, then it opens another timeline, and, like, the world progresses in a different way.
So as in a timeline, do you mean like, because I mean there's what is it called? Type A and type B time. So there's a couple different explanations for that. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, I guess like alternate realities or like parallel timelines, like essentially the exact same version of us exists in another timeline, but living a different life, a completely different life. Or maybe we didn't come into existence because people before us made a different choice.
So arguments are made when it comes to possible realities. In all possible worlds, blah, 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 blah. Within the framework of the position that I hold as a hard determinist, everything necessarily has to be exactly the way it is. I don't believe there's other timelines that can co-interact with this timeline. I'm not ruling it out. I'm more agnostic on it, but I see no good reason to hold a rational belief that there are other timelines. It would feel good to be able to posit that, and you may be able to make the assertion that other timelines do exist to try and explain some type of phenomena or, deja vu or something like that. But I don't think there's any substantial evidence to be able to back the claim up. So I would withhold judgment from that.
Okay. So go for it.
Oh, you can go, Arza.
No, go
so
for
are
it.
you a believer in like the fourth dimension? Like, how there's like the first dimension was just like a straight line, second dimension was just 2D objects, then 3D, and a lot of theories have been going around that the fourth dimension is time because we can travel through time, but we can't go back and forth and we can't go up and down in that. What do you think about that kind of theory?
So I think that there is some substance to it that makes sense. If we were theoretically able to travel to the speed of light, you would be able to stop time, essentially. If would be able to go faster than the speed of light, you would actually be able to go in reverse when it comes to yourself. If you guys have ever heard of the twin paradox, have you guys ever heard of that before?
No, I have not.
So basically, if two twins that were born on the same day at the same time, they're both exactly the same age. If one of them stayed on Earth and another one got in a rocket ship, in a spaceship, and traveled to the outer skirts of the solar system and was on their way back, and they were traveling up to the speed of light or close to the speed of light. When they got back, they would be possibly 3 years older, while their twin would be in their 60s. If they were like 5 years old, both 5 years old when he took off, the one who was on the spaceship would be around 8 years old, while his twin brother would be in their 60s, like 65 or 67 or something like that. So there is time dilation of some sort that can be shown in physics. So I believe that that's demonstrable, but anything outside of that would be...
and they come completely different times, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, they essentially lived in different times, but the dilation of that time was inside of the same reality. So they experienced different times, but I don't think that time was actually different in a ontological sense.
And do you mind defining ontological?
So there's ontological and epistemical. Let me pull up the Stanford, because there's multiple different definitions.
And these definitions have to do with epistemology, right?
Ontology and epistemology are separate things.
Oh, okay.
Ontology. So the Stanford definition, the branch of metaphysics dealing with the nature of being or a set of concepts and categories in a subject area or domain that shows their properties and the relation between them. So ontology would basically be, concepts would be time, the categories would be in this reality, and the domain that shows their properties and the relations between them is saying what are the differentiating factors between somebody traveling at the speed of light rather than somebody standing still on a planet.
So essentially, it's like the philosophy behind existing.
Yes. So epistemology is more of how we know what we know.
The science of knowing, philosophy.
Yeah,
of
it's
knowing.
more of like using, if you've ever heard of Socrates, using the Socratic method. There is street epistemology, to where I'm actually going to try and start doing that once this COVID stuff is over and I don't have snow on the ground. I'm actually going to go out with a GoPro and go to like a park or a campus, like a guy named Anthony Magnabosco. Check him out if anybody's interested. But he does not even argue for atheism at all. He doesn't even let the people know that he's atheist. But he uses the Socratic method to ask certain questions to people to make them question their own beliefs with the words that they are even using. Like, you start off on a scale of 1 to 10. How strong is your belief that you hold? Now, this could be a belief that knocking on wood does something. You could believe in the horoscopes. You read your daily horoscopes. How certain are you that belief is actually true? And then you go through a series of questioning using the Socratic method to get them to question their own beliefs. And maybe plant a seed, they go home and think about it. Next time you see them at the park, you may be able to have a second conversation. And they may have become more skeptical towards their position, because a lot of people are not skeptical at all. They just accept what they believe, and that's that. There's no need to go any further. I don't need new information, to which I find that to be extremely dangerous for the survivability of the human race.
Yeah, right. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to a lot. So we're located in Utah, and Utah's a pretty big Mormon state. And I've talked to a lot of missionaries. Yeah, I've talked to a lot of missionaries where I guess they became less confident in their religion when they got back from their mission, because basically, all these people will be like, oh, how do you know about this? Or how do you know this is real? Or what about this? And they kind of just have to pull out answers out of nowhere, because they're like, oh, I never thought about this. Or, oh, these people come to me and they think I have all these answers, but I don't. And then they think about well, who really does have all these answers? And then they kind of spiral out that way.
Yeah, it's fun whenever I get somebody at my door that's Mormon. I get two 19-year-old kids who just literally are 2 months into their thing, and they hold up. Actually, I got it downstairs. I just bought the Book of Mormon because I start reading it and tearing that apart next. But they show up at the door. They say, I got the good news for you. I want to tell you about the good news. I'm like, sure, I just baked some cookies. Come on in, let's go. So I invite them in, and they don't realize that I lock the door behind me as they come in my house. They have no clue who they're about to sit down and have a conversation with, because I'm literally going to ask them hard questions about their theology, about what they believe in. They believe in a pre-mortal existence, to where they existed before they existed. and
Yeah.
they got to see a summary of their life. Basically, they got to watch a preview of a movie of what their life was going to be. And they can either accept to live that life and make it to heaven, one of the 3 levels of heaven, or they could just not exist and go straight to hell. Well,
Yeah.
are you telling me that the girl who gets raped by her father when she's 3 years old wanted to live, wanted to exist?
And that's the only pathway to heaven
Yes,
is to
that's
go
the
through
only
that.
pathway God is giving you to heaven, and He's all loving. How do those 2 issues coincide with each other? Well, all you can do is appeal to mystery and say, well, God's ways are not like our ways.
Yeah.
Okay, if that's how God's ways is, I don't want shit to do with him because he's a fucking prick.
Yeah.
I don't want anything to do with a God that'll do that.
And is someone that does that worthy of being worshipped, even if they do exist?
No,
Like,
even if they do exist. And that's the thing. I always get asked, well, Justin, if you die and you end up at the gates of Judgment Day and God standing right in front of you and He exists and it's the biblical God and it's the exact same, that God is the exact same way that you perceive, would you believe? I was like, yeah, I'd believe that He exists. I'd be an idiot not to. I mean, He's right here in front of my face.
yeah.
So I would no longer be an atheist, but that does not mean that I'm going to worship this guy.
Mm.
You know, and a lot of people would say that I'm not going to worship him because he's immoral. I hold to something, another very unpalatable framework is I hold to, I'm a moral nihilist. So if you've ever heard of nihilism before, it's defined in a couple different ways. One of them is just complete and utter meaningless and no meaning or purpose in life at all. Another way to define it is also kind of like existentialism, to where there is no objective meaning or purpose in life, which I hold to that. I don't think there's an objective meaning or purpose or morality in this world. I believe that I make up my own purpose, and I make up my own what? Okay, shut the door, please. So I make up my own morals, right? My own morals, even though I make them up, are determined by my previous experiences and influences. So I don't actually choose what they are, but me as a person am determined to make up what I think is right and wrong, but that's based on, you know, the society that I grew up in, the parents that I had. So basically that's how it works with that. So I wouldn't exactly say that I'm not going to worship this God because he's immoral, because I don't believe that morality actually exists outside of just being an illusion, like free will.
Right.
I would say that he's logically weak, that if a God who is all loving could try to get rid of the most harm as you possibly could, to get rid of the most harm, and he's all powerful, then he would be able to do that. The question is, why did he not kill the devil rather than making hell for humans? That's logically inconsistent with an all-loving God. So, and I also believe that God, if he exists, does not have free will. So in another sense, I feel sorry for him. If you, it's called the Omniscience Paradox. If you believe that God is eternal and all-knowing, that means for all of eternity, he's always known everything that was going to happen, including his own decisions.
Yeah.
So there was no point in time to where he actually chose to do something. When it was time to flood the earth, if he already had prior knowledge of him doing that, he could not at the last second say, nah, I'm not going to do that. I changed my mind.
Yeah. So
He would not have had prior knowledge to that.
Yeah.
So he would either have to be not all-knowing, or he doesn't have free will.
Yeah, there was. So I actually was a Mormon missionary. I used to be pretty Mormon. And what people respond, the Mormon, the trained response to this idea of God not having his own free will because he's omniscient, or us not having our own free will because God is omniscient. The Mormon response is, well, it's like a parent. Like, he knows us so well that he knows exactly what decisions we're going to make because of his intimate knowledge of how we'll react to different situations. like how you might know how your kid will likely react in certain situations, but because he's so much more powerful than a human, then he'll be able to predict things more accurately than we will. And so they have this like weird paradoxical thinking where God is omniscient, but at the same time not. And they have convinced themselves that both of these are simultaneously true. But
yeah,
I don't know if you have thoughts on that or if it just goes along with what you were just saying.
So,
but
yeah, I mean, it pretty much goes along with what I was saying. But yeah, what led you out of that Mormon missionary mindset?
Well, I don't know if I ever like fully believed. Like in high school and stuff, I was already like, you know, I didn't appreciate the way like gays were talked about or treated, or women were talked about and treated. I didn't like the way people were talked about or treated that weren't Mormon. There's just like a lot of moral superiority within the religion, and a lot of inherent like no one can be happy outside of Mormonism. And I saw a lot of people in my life that were not Mormon that were happier than people I'd see at church on Sunday. And so I wasn't originally planning on my mission, and then I had an experience that I attributed to God, and I was like, oh, I need to go on a mission. So I went on a mission. I did not like it. And like what Mike was saying, where the mission is a catalyst for a lot of people that doubt the religion, it's either it's a catalyst for people that doubt the religion, or it causes them to double down and be like, we don't know these things, and the only way we can know them is through God, and so we have to rely on our faith. And so it either blocks them off to all other possibilities, or they start to doubt it. I started to doubt it even harder, and that it just spiraled out to where, I just don't align with the religion anymore.
Yeah, faith. That's a very cringy word for me.
Can you expand on that?
Hebrews 11:1. Are you familiar with that?
No, I don't know it off the top of my head.
Hebrews 11:1 says that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things unseen.
Yep. Yeah.
So if you don't have any way to tangibly show that it exists, just put the word faith in there, and now you can say that it does. I find faith to be gullibility. I find faith to be I think Mark Twain actually quoted this. I just want to give him credit for it. He says, faith is believing what you know ain't so. And I don't think anybody could have put it better with that little hinge of that little spice of jab in there. Believing what you know ain't so. So I don't believe that faith is a reliable pathway to truth for the simple fact that I could believe like I used to, and we can actually segue into this if you'd like. I used to believe that the white man was better than any other race. I had faith in that. I had faith in that. So could I be wrong? If I could be wrong, then was faith reliable to finding the truth, to finding the pathway to truth? No. So I can't rely on it. And if I don't have anything else to try and substantiate it or justify it other than just saying that I believe that it's true, is it really worth believing it?
And so another kind of trained Mormon response to that is, well, how do you know your mom loves you? And so like the idea is, okay, well, you can't like physically see love. You can't physically observe it. So like, how do you know that you're loved by your mom? And that's like the trained response. And I have my own thoughts on that, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So how do you know your mom loves you? Are you in a warm house? Can you provide evidence of what you would consider a loving mother? And can you tangibly show how your mother has given you, well, I can't say birthday because I don't think you guys don't do birthdays, do you? Well, I mean, I don't want to say that you're still part of it. I don't know.
No, Mormons do birthdays. Mormons do birthdays.
Jehovah's Witness doesn't do birthdays.
I've never even heard of that. People don't do birthdays?
Yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses
they
don't.
do not. Nope.
They don't do holidays. Oh. They don't do like standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. They don't do, which I can understand that, but
yeah, me too.
Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, I would just simply say that there's tangible evidence to be able to provide good reasoning for why your mother does love you, because you're not out on the streets right now, starving. I mean, you're being taken care of the way that the society has deemed a good mother to take care of her child. So, I mean, there's plenty of evidence to back that up.
And I would argue that, like, you know, arguably you couldn't know even. Like, some people might use the word no, but I would argue, like, you know, they might do these things out of responsibility. And, you know, I'm not sure if they actually do love me. And, you know, I like to think that. And that's like the conclusion I would come to, but that doesn't mean that conclusion is necessarily true.
I agree.
So, Justin, I got a question for you. You seem like a really logical person. Is that correct?
I get persecuted by my family on a daily basis. Why do you got to be so logical?
Right.
I try to be.
Is there anything like
reasonable as I can?
Yeah. Is there anything you believe or follow, or just kind of thoughts in the back of your head where you're like, oh, this doesn't make any sense? Like, I know a lot of atheists that are like still afraid of ghosts. Like they hear something in their house and they'll explore it. Or is there anything where it's like, where you're like, I know it's not true. I still believe, you know, I'm not going to fuck with demons. I'm not going to. Is there anything like that you kind of follow through?
So I don't believe in anything in the supernatural. But I'm 6'3", 270 pounds. I'm a big boy with a big beard. And when I turn the light off, I get the fuck out of that room. I don't know why. I think it's just superstition. But I'm like, you know, like, have you ever seen the cartoons where like the mouse is running from the gate, or the cat's running from the alligator that's like chomping behind it, and it's like got its ass further out in its face? That's kind of how I am when I'm getting out of a room when it's dark. I don't believe anything is there. But I also, like, for example, if you've ever walked into a Walmart, out in front of the doors on the outside of the entrance of Walmart, there are those little pillars out. So if somebody runs their car into it, the pillars will stop it before running into the building.
Yeah.
If my wife walks on this side of it, like, let's just use my microphone, for example. If my wife walks on this side of it and I walk on this side of it, I can't take it. I have to walk back around to the same side because I think that there's a string that's attached to each of us. So really? I can't do it. I can't do it. If I was to turn around and do a 360 to my right, before I get up and leave this room, I have to turn all the way back around to my left, because kind of like when a dog on a leash runs around your ankles, I feel like there's a string catching me and I can't move. You know, or else I'll have a bad day, or else something will go wrong. Now, I really don't believe that any of it's actually true, but my brain tells me, like, dude, just fix yourself. Fix yourself to, you know, it's kind of like wearing a mask. It may not be 100% effective, but it may help. So why not just fucking do it? So I turn back around and then I exit the room. So yeah, there are little things like that kind of fuck me up during the day, but I don't believe that they're actually true.
Right, but like, would you be totally willing, like, for someone to get out the Ouija board, or for
yeah. So the only reason I haven't done that yet is because we're taking care of our grandparents in their house, and they're extremely religious. He's the treasurer of his own Christian church, and just out of respect to him, I'm not going to have invoking spirits, you know, happening in his house. So, you know, they're getting older right now, so we're kind of just hanging out, taking care of them right now, and then we may actually take over the house. I'm not 100% sure, but once it's ours, then it's all the ghosts. I am getting the Ouija board out. You know, I've prayed to God before. I listened to I don't know if you guys are into metal bands, but I listened to a band called Whitechapel. Actually, I got them tattooed across my chest.
Oh, hell yeah.
Look at that.
I love these guys. There is this song called Father of Lies, and the Father of Lies is Satan. In that song, there is this line that says, "My procreator, I have warned thee of thy prophecy. Until that day, stand your fucking ground." And I've prayed to God saying those exact words, saying, strike me down with a lightning bolt, like right now. If you're real, fucking show yourself, like prove it. And I've mocked God, and I've done all these things while still respecting I don't really say this to the people that have these belief systems because it's just not conducive to good argumentation. Yeah. But, in privacy, I will do these things. I will put my atheism to the test and my life to the test. I've reached out to many different Wiccans and witches and people that can cast a spell on you. And I send them videos of me on my knees like this. Please curse me. Please put a curse to fuck up my entire life. I'm begging you. Please do it.
Well,
and then every single time there's, well, I don't want to do that. Or, I think somebody's already cast a good spell on you before, which blocks me from being able. And I'm like, will you guys stop?
Well,
no.
Maybe someone cast a spell on you that there's a string always attached to you.
Right.
Yeah, that's possible.
They got you there. You're scared of the dark.
I don't know. But no, I mean, I've done all that stuff before. So because I honestly don't believe that any of it's true.
Right.
I've heard atheists say before that they became atheists because they're mad at God. And I'm like, how can you be mad at something you don't believe exists? So are you really an atheist? I don't. I would argue no. I would argue you're a pissed off Christian.
That's one of the. Oh, you can go, Arza.
Oh no. I was just gonna segue into talking about your background with you mentioned white supremacy, but if you have a question on this still, Mike, then we.
Yeah, sure.
No, you go ahead, Arza.
Oh, okay. So you mentioned that you grew before you held a belief of white supremacy. Is that what it was?
I grew up in a racist household.
Okay.
I had a decent childhood. I mean, other than my religious views, but I was raised to hold certain positions, and that anybody who doesn't hold these positions are essentially an idiot, a dumbass, not worthy even having conversations with. So I was raised to be a God believer. I was raised to be a Republican, no matter what, every time, all the time. And I was also raised to dislike black people because my great-grandfather was a police officer. He got into a tussle. Some black man shot him in the ass cheek. He survived. He just caught a bullet to the ass cheek. He lived to be 77 years old, retired for 40 years, all kinds of stuff. He lived a good life. But because that black man shot him in the ass, he raised my mother to be that way, and my mother raised me to be that way. So on a daily basis, I heard the N-word at least 15 to 20 times in my house for any given reason. So yeah, it was always the blacks are just sitting here feeding off of the government, they getting their food stamps so they can go be drug dealers, and they're just scum. Wow. And that's why, go down to the projects and blah, 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 blah. And it just got ingrained in my head as I grew up saying, hey, you need to stay away from black people because they're bad news.
Right.
And my mom hates black people. So my mom's taught me everything that I know. So I should hate black people too. And I was raised with that mindset. And I became very adamant against black people. I mean, you could call me a white supremacist at one point in time just because I did have the belief that the white man has been in charge. We took over you guys 400 years ago. We came over here to America and slaughtered the indigenous and the natives because we could do it. If you got a problem with it, revolt against us and overtake us. I dare you.
Right.
And that was the mindset that I had until one day I looked back at my military career and the friends that I made, the black friends that I made. In the military, we're all green. We're all the same color. Yeah. It doesn't matter. And while I was in there, I could see that, but outside of uniform, it went back to the same shit. I found humanism, looked up the definition of it, looked up some videos of what humanism is all about. And I was like, could I be happier if I did that? If I thought of people as equal? And then I started thinking about, what about my skin pigmentation makes me better than somebody else with a different skin pigmentation?
Yeah.
And then I started to realize that skin color has nothing to do with how the brain works. I mean, for the longest time in medical journals, it states that black people feel less pain than white people when in like surgeries. You can go into medical journals and read that shit written down. And because they're black, they feel less pain, so they don't need quite as much anesthesia or numbing medications. because they just feel less pain, so we don't have to use all that on them. Those are the types of things that have come. I mean, it is, and I'm still trying to figure out why. But anesthesia, redheads need more anesthesia than the regular person. I don't know why.
I've heard that actually.
But that's scientific. I mean, it's been scientifically shown that redheads need more anesthesia. But no, there's no scientific background at all. There's no scientific backing for the claim that black people feel less pain, surgically.
Yeah, I still hear that about like even babies. Like, oh yeah, you don't need to give them any numbing for circumcision or anything. And it's like, yeah, you do. I mean, just because they don't remember it, like when they're older, doesn't mean they're not going to feel it and freak out because of it.
Yeah, circumcision. That's another episode we can have.
Yeah, honestly.
Just all about circumcision.
Shit. Man, oh man. Yeah, unfortunately my son, my kids were circumcised due to bad information that I was given, so it's my fault. I was given information that it could prevent diseases and things like that for circumcision.
Yeah.
When in reality, I just gotta teach my kid how to wash his balls.
Yeah, how to shower properly.
So I mean, like, no, I regret. Me and my wife were both very regretful of having him circumcised because from what the scientific journals that I've read and the papers that have been put out, the peer-reviewed papers, most of the nerve endings are in that portion of the penis that gets cut off.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're basically taking half of your son's once he grows up in a relationship with somebody, you're taking away half the pleasure for him.
Right.
I mean, honestly, I don't want to think about my son, knocking boots with somebody, but when he grows up, I want him to enjoy life as much as possible, being a humanist.
Yeah.
Right.
So I highly regret it. I mean,
do you guys know why circumcision was like a thing in America?
It's religious roots, right?
Well, yeah.
Well, it was to prevent your child from masturbating. Like, it was like, oh, they're not going to masturbate anymore. Like, that was a big thing. I think it started in like the early 1900s where they like started circumcising all kids, or trying to talk parents into doing it. And I don't know about you guys, but I know a lot of teenagers that still masturbate even though they're circumcised.
Yeah,
so that didn't exactly work out.
Well, like, I mean, I don't know how many guys that I went up to was like, "Hey, bro, what's up? You circumcised?" Like, I don't think I've actually like asked a whole bunch of people, but that when we've gotten into these conversations, it comes out, and yeah, I don't think it stops anything. I really don't. I really think that that's an excuse that was made. It was really religion. If you look in the Bible, foreskin was basically some type of currency. Like, they used that shit as money.
Oh,
like, well, yeah, like there was one story where I don't know if it was Abraham, but he could get something if he was able to collect 100 foreskins of his people and his slaves. And he said, "No, screw that. I'm not picking 100 foreskins. He went and got 200 foreskins."
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. There was another one where I think it was Abraham also, to where he had been deceived by one of his children. So one of his children actually got himself circumcised and then rubbed his foreskin on the bottom of Abraham's foot to kind of like seal the deal and make things better, I guess.
Hell yeah.
That's not how I would want to do it. I'd probably pick another option than to cut off my foreskin.
I know that with those religious roots of circumcision, I actually know that Mormonism, when Joseph Smith was alive, he like received a revelation, I'm saying in quotes for those that are listening, that it was no longer needed for people to be circumcised. So I know like religiously for Mormons, it's been done away with supposedly since like the 1800s. That being said, tons of Mormons are still circumcised just because of tradition, but
yeah. I recently, within the last 3 months, actually watched a video of a traditional Jewish circumcision.
Is that where they like suck the blood?
Not only the blood, like the rabbi literally has a 10 blade and he will cut the foreskin off of the 2-year-old baby and then literally suck the foreskin and the blood off of the baby's penis.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Like I basically almost threw up after watching. I was like, dude, you're sucking a baby's dick right now.
Yeah, it's
What are you doing?
and it's like Mike said, where he mentioned, people say like, oh, like they don't need anesthesia, but really it's just they're not remembering it. But those things still leave imprints on people. Yeah. Like I know I've heard stories of like people having nightmares of like them drowning in bath water, like a recurring nightmare, and they aren't sure why. And then like their mom tells them like, oh yeah, when you were like a newborn, you were molested by like your uncle while you were like being given a bath or stuff like that. And so like these things like leave imprints on people, right? Like even if you can't clearly remember what happened.
Now, a question on the race thing. You said you were Mormon.
Yeah.
Did you ever have the belief that that black people hold the mark of Cain?
I never did. That is very common. That was one of my that was one thing that I never really understood, even when I was very young. Because half the people still believe that, first off. Like the church's official stance, and I say the church referring to Mormon church. I apologize. That's how everyone refers to it in Utah. But the Mormon church is official stance is not that anymore, but it once was. And, they like to think that everything is solved with their racist past. For those that don't know, Mormons used to restrict black people from having full access to the religion. And it was like a decade after the civil rights movement before they allowed full access to the religion for black people. And, I in the Bible, people, like, it seems like prophets are usually ahead of the time in terms of, like, I guess, social justice, and usually society is mad at them for, like, trying to change things. And I felt like the Mormon church was always the opposite. Like they would try and keep things back. They fought against women's rights. They fought against black rights. They called the civil rights movement like communist propaganda, like Russian infiltration and stuff like that. So yeah, I never really aligned with any of that.
Women still don't have the same rights as men in the Mormon church, right? Even today.
Oh no. And they try and twist it. They're like, well, women can have babies and I can't have babies. So like, it's fair that they have to stay home and they don't get like the priesthood, which is the power of God, that men receive this power of God and women can't, and stuff like that.
On that right there, when it comes to like abortion and things like that, I'm actually formulating an argument that I don't think that we've been, on the pro-choice side that we've been actually arguing for, that we need to start arguing, because the pro-lifers will pull at the heartstrings of others saying that we're baby killers, Yeah. We are voting to have people, be baby killers. Why don't we, instead of arguing in defense of that, go on the offensive and say that they are arguing for forced labor? I'm formulating an argument to pose that proposition that they are actually forcing women to go into labor.
Yeah, right. Like forcing them to fill that role. Yeah, and my whole thinking with like the pro-life argument is, they care about getting the baby out of the womb so much, but they don't care about taking care of a baby if it's born impoverished or born without opportunities or born with mental illness or
once that baby's born and out of the womb and they can't oppress the woman for making a decision on her own, then the child goes to a foster care if the mother can't support having the child once she is forced into labor and to have the child. And my question is, if you're so upset about children if you want children to be born regardless of the situation, why aren't Christians literally lined out the door of these foster homes? Trying to get these children and give them a good life. I mean, if you're so adamant about telling another woman what to do with the embryo and the zygote that is feeding off of her own body, who is at this point a non-viable potential life, not yet viable, I don't want to say non-viable, not yet viable potential life.
Mm.
What? Stay in your lane. Like, it's fine if you want to play with your religious toys inside of your house, but don't bring your toys over and try and tell my kids or anybody else how we're supposed to play with these toys. You can keep your toys over there and you play with them how you like. And if you don't want to have abortions inside of your family, then so fucking be it. Don't have abortions within your family. But when you start legislating laws based on your religious beliefs on the God that I can actually have a conversation with you and show you how your God can't logically exist, then you have no right to be pushing your views and voting for things that will suppress other people's rights based on, as of right now, a myth and a fairy tale.
Yeah, and it's really tricky because, you know, these people, they literally have the mindset that it's murder, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like, how do you, I don't know, I guess you're someone that's good to talk to about this. Like, you had these view of like white supremacy and stuff. Like, how did you overcome that belief system? How, like, what factors helped you to change this worldview that you had?
You have to, I consider myself a bullet biter. Have you ever heard the phrase, you got to bite the bullet?
Yeah.
I bite the bullet on a lot of things. I bite the bullet on hard determinism. When it comes to people didn't get to choose to do horrible things, I bite the bullet on that. Moral nihilism, I bite the bullet on that. I also had to bite the bullet on being wrong. People hate being wrong. And I heard a quote by Bill Nye that stated, everyone you speak to knows something that you don't. Every conversation you have, you're speaking to someone that knows something that you don't.
I love that.
So I took that and I embraced that. And when I was shown to be wrong and actually put my own positions to the test and held the same standards of evidence for every position that I hold, I was able to look at some of them and say, this doesn't make sense. This guy over here is telling me that I'm wrong. I can show how mine could be wrong. I can't show how his could be wrong. Why am I going to double down and just say that I'm still right because I don't want to be wrong? Do I not want to believe in as many true things and as few false things as possible? If I do, then maybe I should think about this a different way. Maybe I should think that I was wrong, but now I'm right. And there's one less thing that I don't know. Then there's one less thing that I was wrong about. So I embrace it in that sort of way, to where if you were to show me that I was wrong in anything that I've said on this podcast, I wouldn't be pissed off. I wouldn't be butthurt. I would be happy that I've learned something now that I can add to my list of things that I know. How is that a bad thing? Yeah. So I basically just switched my view on how to take criticism. And that's what changed everything. That's when I dropped religion. That's when I dropped the right-wing Republican mindset. That's when I dropped, the white supremacy and embraced humanism, just because it can be shown to make way more sense.
Yeah, it's so hard for people to be wrong, even when it comes to something as stupid as like sports teams. Like, you guys know Ivy League schools. I guess they were doing studies on like schools viewing football matches between like their team and their rival college. And what they saw is both sides literally saw like they noticed worse plays in the other team, as well as like more fouls or bad plays than the other side. And the other side had better plays and good plays. And it's funny. And I feel like people treat their belief system as a sports team as well, where it's like they just see so much wrong on the other side. No matter how wrong they are, they just, they come up with all these things, and they only see what they want to see,
Yeah, I agree. And that's a mixture of a couple different things. That's cognitive dissonance. That's confirmation bias. And that's also something called counting the hits and ignoring the misses. So whenever something good happens for you, you're like, hey, look at that. And then when something bad happens, you're like, don't look. It happened.
Yeah.
So I got one more question for you, Justin. Do you? So you're
minutes left before I get to wrap up.
I got you. So you're on TikTok quite a bit, right?
Yeah, I am. I haven't made a video in quite a while because I've been focusing on really getting my YouTube channel up and out there.
Right.
But yeah, I got quite a few videos on TikTok.
Do you know who Only JS is?
Only JS? No.
So she's a TikToker and she's got about 10 million subscribers right now, and she's getting a lot of heat because I guess she said the N-word back in 2017. And it was a really crappy way to say the N-word, at least in my opinion. Like, I don't know, you hear like the gamers that say the N-word and they're just kind of using it just ironically, not ironically, but just to kind of say it for attention. Like the way she
not
used
that
it
justifies it, but
no, it doesn't. I'm just saying there's different ways you can say it.
For sure.
It can be worse based on it. So the way she used it was so much hate behind that. And that was 4 years ago. And I'm curious, like, and so she's getting a lot of backlash for it, and she's getting a lot of hate, and people are trying to shut her down. And I'm curious, like, when is the amount of time, like, forgiveness, or you should be able to be accepted over that? I'm trying to phrase that in a good way. Do you understand what I'm trying to ask, Justin?
Yeah. So I would say that she was, if she used it in a very derogatory way, that she was wrong for that, and that whoever she said it to, she needs to seek, for lack of better words, some type of repentance from that person. Right. And you need to go to that person and make things right. Once you've made things right with that person and they have forgiven you, why do we need to keep beating a dead horse? She made a mistake. She fucked up. She said some stupid shit. Does she continue to say it? Or has she learned from her mistakes? Resolve the problem with the person that she might have, said this to. If she had, I think we need to leave her alone and let her do her thing. Because, I mean, I am for free speech, in this country. But I'm also for, righting your wrongs. So if she's righting her wrongs, you're taking something that's already been resolved from a couple of years ago and still continuing to throw it in her face.
Yeah. I always thought that was interesting.
Finish your thought,
I always
Mike.
thought that was interesting. Like, blackface was like supposed to be kind of like a quote funny thing back in like the 2000s. Like a lot of YouTubers did it. It was on TV shows, and then now people are trying to cancel him for that. When like I've never been a fan of blackface. Never thought it was funny. I thought there's just ways too much racism behind that for it to ever be funny. But now all of a sudden people are like, oh, hey, that's not okay. Let's cancel these people because 10 years ago, or even 12, 15 years ago, there's a video of them doing blackface. And I always thought that was an interesting reason to just like cancel somebody, because that was accepted, 15 years ago. And now it's not. And they're getting all this backlash for it, when even the same people 15 years ago were laughing at that kind of stuff.
I'd be curious, and I always somehow, like I said, I'm obsessed with this religion shit. I would somehow ask to see if some of these people believed in, the Bible, and be like, should we cancel Christianity because back in the day they promoted slavery? Like, should we cancel them because of what they did thousands of years ago? I mean, should they be canceled because of that? Well, times are different. Yeah, exactly. That's the fucking point. Is that times are different now. It was more acceptable back then. It was more of a nuanced thing to do. So now it's not as acceptable. So if they're not doing it right now and they did it back then, and then they've stopped doing it because they realize that times have changed and it's not the way to do things, and maybe they've changed their mind. Like, I'm sure there's people that know me for the old me and that might want to cancel, let's just say the EA show, because I used to be a white supremacist.
Yeah.
If I'm no longer part of that organization or promoting that type of thinking, leave me alone.
Yeah, I think as a society, we celebrate too much people's failures and don't celebrate enough people's growth. And a big example I see of this in politics specifically, I think we have a big issue with it with politicians. We don't allow them to change their viewpoints, is Mitt Romney. because I guess he's the most likely senator to vote across party lines. And in my eyes, that's a wonderful thing, that he votes according to like his belief system, and rather than feeling like he has to stick to a narrative, like he's willing to learn and vote even when it's not in his best interest of getting reelected. And a lot of Utah conservatives condemn him for that. A lot of conservatives condemn him for that. But I think that's something that we should look for in our politicians, are people that are willing to learn and grow, and, you know, being willing to compromise and vote across party lines. But instead, he's condemned for it.
Now, Ted Cruz, on the other hand, fuck that guy.
Amen.
Mitch McConnell. Oh, yeah, all those people.
Didn't he resign already? He was like forced to resign.
McConnell?
Oh, I didn't know that.
I don't think it was McConnell. It was somebody else from Texas.
Oh, the mayor is the mayor of some town in Texas who was just
He basically said, "Pull yourselves up by the bootstraps. All y'all are just trying to get off the system and whatnot." Blah, blah, blah.
He said only the strong survive.
yeah, right.
Dude was insane.
Going back to Darwinian natural selection.
Yeah.
And now he's making that claim that he resigned and then said all that stuff, and it's come out that like it's pretty ambiguous whether or not, because he was still technically the mayor when he said that. And yeah, I mean, that just means basically he said it, he got a ton of backlash, and then he resigned. And now he's trying to be like, no, like I resigned and then I did it. That's why I said it. You know, they would fuck those people.
How dare you not want to freeze to death?
Yeah.
Right. We switched over to a non-government gas and electric system, and our dumbasses decided that we're never gonna get snow. The last time we got snow was 1974, so we don't need these winter kits installed on our equipment. And then now everybody's pipes are bursting, their roofs are caving in. They're like, oh fuck, 2 feet of snow fucking sucks.
Do you live in Texas?
Yeah.
No,
he lives in Ohio.
Oh, okay. Yeah, man.
Yeah, but I got a couple buddies that live down in Texas. Those houses are not made for that type of weather.
Yeah.
Not just that, but a lot of the power systems, like they were made in the 1950s, over 70 years ago, and I guess the lifetime is supposed to be only about 50 years. That's maximum.
Well, yeah.
And so,
but the problem is, recently they've actually gone to a different type of gas and electric system. They've went to renewable energy. They've come off of government-funded electricity. So now they're running off of their own systems, off of like turbines and things like that for renewable energy and solar panels. And they didn't install winter kits. So they're bitching that, I wouldn't say bitching, some of them that are more uneducated are stating that it's not the fact that when the people installed the systems that they didn't install winter kits, because they don't understand that. They're just saying that these winter turbines, these not winter, but these turbines do not work properly in the wintertime. To where I just put them on a plane and take them to Alaska.
Yeah.
And show that there's snow on the ground most of the year, and they got turbines. They have
or
winter
Greenland.
kits.
And also
winter kits on their turbines. They knew how to set it up, and you should have put winter kits on yours. Even though you live in Texas, there's still a certain percentage of possibility that you may get snow.
And most of the power isn't even coming from turbines. It's like a lot of the power grid is still like traditional, like natural gas and oil and coal and stuff like that in Texas.
Is water pretty big over there?
Water? I don't know about water. I do know that that a city about 10-15 minutes away from me called Hamilton, Ohio, they literally have the cleanest water in America.
Oh wow.
Which is surprising. It's super surprising because they're also the #1 heroin spot in America.
Damn.
Look at that. They go hand in hand, obviously. Causation is correlation.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being part of our show today. Sounds like you had a busy day today, and so thanks for making time. If anyone wants to support us, you can find us at anchor.fm/Mike at the Helm. And again, do you want to tell them one last time where they can find you, Justin, to support you?
Sure. Yeah. So, obviously, I have the YouTube channel, the EA Show or the Empathetic Atheist. You can find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page. First and last name is Justin Downing. That's my personal page. I'm more than willing to talk to people through that. I also have a TikTok, Empathetic Atheist on TikTok. I have a Twitch account. I haven't really streamed to Twitch yet, but I plan on having some type of system that'll help me do that. What else? We also have a Patreon. If you'd like to support the Patreon, patreon.com/EA Show for Empathetic Atheist. You'll be able to see it both ways. You just type it in. It'll pull us up. But yeah, that's where you can find me and support the show. Or if you'd like to become a guest, if you're religious and you didn't like something that I said and you may be wanting to do a friendly religious debate or a conversation, either way, I'm open to that. You can be a pastor. If you have a pastor or you know somebody that has, credentials or some type of PhD within a certain theology, please send them my way. I'm looking for those people that are a little bit more knowledge than the lay Christian or the lay theist. No disrespect to anybody, but I've had a lot of lay theists on the show, right. And I'm debating a guy on Sunday to where I asked him, he wants to debate the existence of God. And I asked him, I said, do you know what the incarnation is? No. Do you know what the substitutionary atonement is? He said, no. I said, do you know what absolute divine simplicity is? He said, no. I said, I would feel bad debating you because I'm literally just going to smack you around. And I don't want to do that. I want to have conversations that are challenging for me because that would be worth having the conversation.
Yeah, it helps everyone grow.
Yeah, so I don't want to take somebody, it'd be like me getting into a fist fight with a 3-year-old. Right. I have the knowledge that he doesn't have, yet he believes in it. I'm not going to sit there and argue. I'm just going to encourage him to go learn. Like, here, go read this book. Come back. Tell me that, I've learned more about this and I'm comfortable having a debate. Then we'll have a slight conversation before to see if I think that you actually know what you claim to know, and then we can move forward.
Right. There's a lot of atheists that kind of talk like that too, where I know you have to go, so I'm just gonna make it quick. But there's a lot of atheists that kind of talk like that too, where they'll be like, yeah, God's not real. And I'll be like, well, why? I'm agnostic, but I'll be like, why? They'll be like, because evolution and the earth is older than 6,000 years. And I'm like, that's your reasoning? Like, I feel like there's so many arguments that can go against that.
The best way to be a hard atheist, to be an atheist that makes an assertion that God does not exist, is to first get on the same level with somebody that you both value logic and reasoning. If you both value logic and reasoning, you can go through the 3 classical laws of logic: identity, non-contradiction, and excluded middle. Now, what you do is you dive into their belief system. You, for conversation's sake, accept and concede that their God exists, and then see if there's any logical inconsistencies within that. Right. The Christian God, the Trinity itself, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. The Father is God, the Son is God, the Holy Spirit is God. They would necessarily, agree with that. The Father is not the Son, the Father is not the Holy Spirit, the Son is not the Holy Spirit. There is exactly one God. Now, at face value, there is an identity problem, because you're saying that all 3 of those persons are identical to God, but they're not identical to each other. So how do we not have 3 gods? And there's an issue there that I love to speak about, but the lay Christian can't even get to the point that they understand that there's a problem or admit that there's a problem. It's an apparent contradiction. I'm not saying that it literally is a contradiction. I'm saying that at face value, this seems like it's a contradiction. So you can dive into different models of the Trinity to try and solve that issue. That's how I think the right way to go about becoming a hard atheist is to literally find logical inconsistencies within a specific worldview.
Yeah,
if you can do that, you can dismiss it.
Yeah, I would love to talk about the Mormon viewpoints with you sometime, because the Mormons do view them all, like the Trinity, for example, do see them all as separate beings.
Yeah.
And so I would love to hear your viewpoints on all of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
But
it's actually it's quite easy with the Mormons. They believe that they're all separate beings, but if all of those separate beings are still necessary, that means that they are all omniscient, which means that they would be omniscient on each other. So they would all simultaneously be in charge of each other.
Right.
How could you be in charge of somebody that's in charge of you? That's a violation of excluded middle. You can't be in charge of somebody, but yet they're in charge of you simultaneously. That's logically impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just how I roll out Mormonism.
But
and if we were to say that logic and reason doesn't adhere to God, well then cool. I'll just create whatever God I want to, and say that he does anything that he wants to. And then when you say that doesn't make sense, therefore he's not real, I'll be like, hey, whoa, hey, my God doesn't adhere to logic and reasoning. He has his own. And you could never tell me that I was wrong.
Yep, that's the purpose of that argument. But yeah, so we can let you go. We've taken quite a bit of your time today. But yeah, everyone, go ahead and go check Empathetic Atheist out, Justin, and give him some love. He really helped us out, was really understanding of some technical difficulties we're having today. Really appreciate that. And yeah, Mike, do you have any last closing statements or words?
Yeah, thanks so much for having us on, man. Thanks so much for having us on. We'd love to have you on again. I don't know. I feel like I probably missed out on 50% of the conversation with my connection. So maybe it might be better to have you on again just to have a better experience.
Sure, anyway, let's double tap it. I'm down.
Yeah, we'll double tap it. All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much for being on, though.
Yeah, sure.